I'm Milo Yiannopoulos, and I'm here at the last frontier in Girdwood, Alaska. You might be wondering why I'm spending time in America, so much time in America recently, and less time in my native Europe, and that's because I've seen the continent change very dramatically in my 30-odd years on the planet. Britain prides itself on being a nation of immigrants, and to some degree that's certainly true. But Muslim immigration is different. Muslims haven't integrated in the way that other previous waves of immigrants have. In fact, successive generations, in particular the Pakistani community, are getting worse, not better. We're sending hundreds of fighters to ISIS, nearly as many as Belgium, which is a hotbed of jihadism. Part of the problem is our media and our politicians. The idea that you can't criticize somebody or identify a problem or solve a crime properly for fear of being called racist led to 1,400 girls being raped in Rotherham. Sweden, once a bastion of progressive values, a feminist haven, is now the rape capital of Europe. And police there are even banned from putting the ethnicity of alleged rapists on police reports. There's now a Muslim crime wave in Europe. It's a crime wave that politicians don't want to address, law enforcement can't address, and the media is covering up. Just think about how long it takes for any of your news stations or newspapers to mention the M word or the I word after the latest terrorist atrocity. Yet those terrorist attacks, in particular the ones in France and Brussels recently, were committed by a mixture of homegrown terrorists and fake migrants. We're so dumb, our immigration services are so completely incoherent, confused and unable to do their jobs, and our politicians so dishonest, we can't protect our borders and we can't protect ourselves. This is a difficult subject, and one that many Europeans don't want to address for fear of coming across as racist or somehow bigoted. But if we're not honest about the problem, we can't fix it. And now is not the time to worry about being labeled by the left-wing press just because you are justifiably concerned about the changes happening to your communities. As a gay man, I'm not so worried about GDP. I'm not even principally concerned with British sovereignty. I'm worried more about the influx of a culture that wants me dead. We saw that just last week in Orlando in Florida. The biggest, the most senseless, the deadliest and most horrifying mass shooting in American history. And let's be completely clear, and again, this is an uncomfortable thing to address, but this wasn't radical Islam. It wasn't terrorists. It was mainstream Islam that did this. Consider a few statistics if that is off-putting to you or you find that awkward. In a Gallup poll, 1,001 out of 1,001, that's 100% of British Muslims, told pollsters that they found homosexuality to be an unacceptable lifestyle choice. 52% of British Muslims in a later poll said they wanted it made illegal. 39% of British Muslims, this is British Muslims by the way, not Muslims in Syria, this is not Raqqa, this is London, this is 2 streets away from where you live. 39% of them think a woman should always obey her husband. These are regressive attitudes. These are terrifying attitudes for modern, liberal, capitalist democracies that have fought for decades to give women and minorities the rights that they deserve. This culture is coming into Europe. For hundreds of years, Europe was a mesmerizing and unique place in world culture. It was the pinnacle of art, music, philosophy, history, science, you name it. This is the continent of Hume, Hobbes, Shakespeare, Mozart, and Wagner. But something's happened to that continent recently. Something has changed. As a result of unaccountable and incompetent globalist bureaucrats, the nature of the continent is changing, and it's becoming defined not by those incredible innovations, but instead by fear. France, the motherland of Berlioz, Cézanne, Debussy, and Monet, now has no-go zones. The police don't enter there. Why? This is what we've allowed to happen to our civilization. This is what we've allowed to happen to our communities. To my mind, this is the single greatest threat to the stability, safety, security and happiness of you and your family. Britain doesn't need to share this fate. It doesn't need to buy into the suicidal open-door refugee policies of Germany or the no-go zones of France. The UK has a brighter future, or at least it could do if it makes the right decision this week. I was in Orlando last week, the site of the deadliest shooting attack in American history. And it was committed, of course, by a Muslim who hates gays. In my hometown, London, we've elected a mayor, Sadiq Khan, who's called a moderate, but he cozied up to some pretty ugly individuals in the past when he was an advocate and a lawyer. And people are starting to ask questions. They're starting to wonder why the minute he was elected, his wife donned a hijab. Why he's having segregated rallies where women in headscarves are standing behind men. Why he's picking fights with Donald Trump because the presumptive Republican nominee had the audacity to say, maybe America has a Muslim problem. And now Sadiq Khan wants to ban images of women on the tube. He might be doing it in the name of feminism, but it sounds suspiciously like what we've heard from other parts of the world, doesn't it? America is still reeling from the senseless attack in Orlando. What everyone here is asking themselves is, how can we prevent it from happening again? Well, here's one thing we do know. There's no reason to suppose that Muslims in Europe have any higher opinion of gays, women, blacks, Latinos, or any of the rest of us than their counterparts in America. Immigrant used to mean somebody who moved from one country to another to better their chances, to improve the quality of life for them and their family. But the Muslim immigrants in Europe don't seem to want that. They want something different. They want to drag us down to the regressive social attitudes and terrifying religious conservatism of the Middle East. The UK is better than that. The UK, in fact, has always had a better record on being proudly independent, pro-free speech, and pro all of those other great things that made Western civilization a good place to live. Democracy, property rights, freedom of imagination and thought and speech. Much better record than any of its counterparts in Europe. Now's the opportunity for the people of Britain to show it. The people of Britain to protect themselves from a wave of immigrants that do not share their values, and in some cases hold beliefs entirely antithetical to them. I believe that the Brexit campaign in the UK is Britain's best hope. It is Britain's best chance to stem the tide of immigration that threatens our way of life and threatens our most vulnerable people. If I were you, I would vote Leave.